Hello, everybody. I am so excited to see people already popping on here. I am going to get started in just a few minutes, but I just wanted to say thank you for being here and spending the next 30, 45 minutes with me. I am super passionate about this topic and about helping moms around the world find a way to make breastfeeding work. So thank you for being here. Be sure to introduce yourself. This is my first time I'm doing this, so there might be some technical things along the way, but I appreciate your patience and hopefully this will be very valuable to you. I think I will just give one more minute to get a couple more people to pop on, and then we'll go ahead and get started. I also have to apologize in advance if I cough. I have been trying to get over a cold, and so I'll be drinking my herbal tea and hopefully not having any coughing attacks during this. But I'm going to go ahead and get started. So let me get this up here. Please tell me if you can ever not see anything. Again, this is a new program, but right now you should be able to see my presentation, which is me there. Obviously, that was a long time ago. My hair was much longer, but I think I'm ready to get started. So if you have questions at any time, put them in the chat. I will be doing questions at the very end of the presentation. So if I don't answer it right away, don't worry, I will answer all of them. I will stay as long as I need to answer any questions. But let's go ahead and get started. The title of my presentation is 5 Ways You Might Be Sabotaging Your Milk Supply Without Even Realizing It. I was a little hesitant about naming it this because I never want you to think that you are doing anything purposely wrong or that you're doing anything wrong. I think calling things like mistakes, I think they're just things that you learn from, and you don't know what you don't know. So that's why I'm sharing these things that I see over and over again with the moms that I work with. Things that hurt their supply and they don't realize that it's hurting its supply or setting them up to have an issue with their supply down the road. And this isn't just about low supply. We're going to be talking about oversupply as well, and perceived low milk supply, because I find that is one of the biggest issues I see across the board. So hopefully this works. Let's see. Okay. So by the end of our time together, I hope that you come away with a ton of knowledge, but some of the main things that I hope that you'll be able to learn is how milk supply actually works. I think most of us understand the basics, but there are just a few intricacies that can make it easier to understand why some babies nurse more frequently than others, why you don't need to wait for your breast to fill up, things like that. We're going to be talking about 3 myths that might be leading you down a path toward low supply or oversupply. Mistakes that I see constantly. And I hate to say mistakes. So if I say mistakes, please just forgive me and know that it's not because you're doing something wrong. It's just the only word I can come up with. So there's things that I see constantly that are hurting so many supplies. And you might be surprised by some of these. How much milk supply or how much milk is really average, because you might be surprised to find out that it's not as much as you think. I was talking to a colleague yesterday, and she said the vast majority of the low supply cases she works with actually are moms that are making more than enough milk. They just aren't aware of what normal is. And then actionable tips for establishing and maintaining your milk supply. I won't be discussing that exactly during the presentation, but there will be things throughout it. There won't be like a specific section, but we will be talking about it throughout. So I hope that you can walk away knowing even more than you do now. And again, if you have questions, pop them in the question box and I will answer them at the end. Okay, sorry, my computer's a little slow. And if you watch till the end, you will get my Mastering Your Milk Supply ebook. This is not a product that I typically give away for free, but I'm so grateful that you're here that if you watch till the very end, there will be a link that will be placed, and then you can grab it there. And if for some reason you have to leave and you're like, I really wanted to participate, let's see. Sorry, I'm going to mute my computer. There we go. You really wanted to participate, but you had to leave for whatever reason, because I totally understand that happens. You can just email me and I will be more than happy to give you the ebook. But it has a lot of great information about milk supply, and it's one of my favorite ones that I have that I've created, and I cannot wait to share it with you as a thank you for coming to this presentation. Um, let's see. I had someone just asking me for the link, so I am going to go ahead and send that over to her. And then we'll get started. So sorry for some of the awkwardness right now. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So get ready to learn. I want you to silence your phone. I should have silenced my computer earlier, but it's all silenced now. So I want you to silence your phone, any notifications, log off of Instagram or Facebook, save your questions for the end of the broadcast, or put them into the chat, and we will answer them at the very end. And grab a notebook, your phone, whatever, where you can take notes, because I'm going to be giving you a lot of information. The good news is this will be recorded and available for 72 hours after this presentation. So you can go back and reference things, take screenshots, do whatever. The only thing I ask is that you don't download the presentation, record it, and share it with people all over the internet, which I'm sure you're not going to do, but just a little warning, or not warning, a little disclaimer. Let's see. So if this sounds familiar, I hope you will stick around. I hope that you're here because you feel like this is something beneficial, but these are some of the things we're going to be definitely diving into. So you might not know what normal milk supply actually is. You struggle with social media comparison where huge freezer stashes are constantly in your feed. You're struggling with your milk supply and you aren't sure why. You need motivation and support to keep going with breastfeeding. Or you've heard people talk about supply and demand, but secretly wonder what that even looks like. Because I will tell you, I have so many moms that will say, this sounds dumb, but I don't know what that means. And trust me, it's very common. And I didn't know what that meant either when I first had my baby, or my first son. So in case you don't know who I am, my name is Katie Clark, and I am an international board certified lactation consultant. More importantly, I am a mother of 3 little boys. My oldest is 11, my middle child is 8, and my youngest is 4. And I love breastfeeding. I have breastfed all of my children, but that was not without troubles. With my second, I always say I went through about every problem that you can imagine when it comes to breastfeeding, and it was really hard. But that's where I gained my passion for teaching and supporting other moms and families when it comes to breastfeeding, because I discovered very quickly that the people I thought I could turn to for advice and support actually gave me some really horrible advice, and that the support out there, and just there's a lot of stigmas about breastfeeding. And from there, I began my journey to helping many moms around the world, and it's truly become my passion. I passed the IBCLC exam in July, but I have a lot of training under my belt, a lot of experience, and I'm constantly learning so I can better serve you and your families. I'm so glad that you're here, and it's just something that I'm super passionate about, and I'm grateful for you trusting me to teach you a little bit on your journey. So the first question is, can every mom make enough milk? The truth is, most moms can produce enough milk. I think a lot of times we see a lot of stories out there about low milk supply, or a baby who wasn't getting enough, or supplies that dried up overnight. And this does happen, and I never would discount that experience because it is very difficult when that happens. But the vast majority of moms, when everything is kind of going into place correctly, can make enough milk. But like I said, there are moms that don't and won't be able to make a full supply of milk. And there are various reasons for that. There's everything from insufficient glandular tissue to past breast surgery to underlying health conditions. There's moms that induce lactation that aren't able to produce an entire supply of milk. However, understanding how milk supply works can make these hard situations still more successful, because there are things that you can do in the early days of breastfeeding, especially to establish a more robust supply, even if you do have an underlying condition such as insufficient glandular tissue, which I can talk about more later if you've never heard of that. So before we dive into too much more, I want to talk about how breast milk production works. It's a cyclical process, and it all starts with stimulation at the breast, your baby nursing using a pump. When that happens, when that suckling happens, that sends a signal to your brain to release the hormones that produce breast milk. That ends up going to the next sign where you release that breast milk, and then you feed your baby and you cuddle your baby, and it keeps going around and around. So you nurse your baby, your brain tells you to nurse or tells you to produce breast milk, you produce breast milk, you cuddle, you love your baby, and it all continues on. So the more often that this happens, your baby nursing or you pumping, the faster that the milk is produced. This is something that I think is really fascinating and that they really should teach when your baby is born or before your baby's born. Because I hear many moms saying, oh, I have to wait for my breast to fill up before I feed my baby again. And while yes, sometimes babies can get a little impatient if you had just pumped and they want to nurse like 30 minutes later, or you just nurse them and they're cluster feeding, because some of them do like that faster flow. Your milks are continually making milk. And if the baby is suckling at the breast, that is telling your brain to make more milk. And it's actually, if you wait for your breast to fill up, that can actually stop milk production, because as they get fuller, there's something called the feedback inhibitor of lactation. And this is something that gets released and tells your body, stop making milk. So it's actually better empty breast, make more milk. So if you follow me on Instagram, you have probably seen my reel this week about ice makers. Ice makers are a great analogy when it comes to breast milk production, because it's very similar in the process. So with your ice maker, if it is empty, the machine starts making more milk, and it keeps making it until it gets filled to the top. But then when it gets filled to the top, it stops making ice. You won't just have your ice maker overflow forever. Eventually, if you don't remove that ice from the ice maker, it gets all clogged up. It's really hard to get out, and you probably will have to get in there and break up the ice. This is very similar to breast milk production. With breast, it's like I talked about earlier, that if you let your breast get all filled up, then your body's going to stop making milk, because it just can't have the available milk in your breasts. It can't have more available milk in your breast. And if you just leave it there and don't remove it, if you don't nurse, things like that, it can get all clumped up. You can get inflammation in your milk ducts to cause clogged ducts, mastitis, and it can be very difficult for milk to come out. When it comes to clogged ducts, a lot of people think that there's like an actual big blob of clogged milk in there, but it's actually that there is inflammation in the milk ducts, and so the milk just can't flow as freely. And again, put your questions in the chat and I will answer them at the end. So storage capacity. This is another reel I did this week, which was about grapes. So I wish I had a little picture of different bunches of grapes with different grapes, but usually I will show that there's like one bunch that has a few, one that has more, and then one that's very plentiful like this. Every one of you has a different storage capacity. Your breasts can actually have different storage capacities as well. And this this dictates how much available milk you can have at any given time available in your breasts. And you can successfully breastfeed with a low storage capacity and a high storage capacity. It just can make it different on how often you need to pump or you need to give breast milk through breastfeeding. And sometimes I see people think they have low milk supply, but it's actually because they have a lower storage capacity, that they can produce enough milk, but they need to more frequently empty the breast in order to provide that much milk. So again, you can have different storage capacities and still make enough milk. This is based on how much of the milk making ducts and like glandular tissue that you produce, which begins production during puberty and then increases significantly during pregnancy for most women. So a lot of times you will see after you've had 2 or 3 babies that you have even more milk than you did originally. And that's because it builds on the glandular tissue that is already there. So even sometimes a mom that didn't make enough with her first baby, she may just make enough more glandular tissue next time to make more milk. So if you struggled at one time, don't always think that that's going to be the situation all of the time. Let's see. So this is a little chart. You might want to take a picture of it. So what's your magic number? This is a concept that was developed by Nancy Moorbacher, who is a fantastic lactation consultant and researcher in the breastfeeding world. And basically, it's the minimum number of times you need to remove breast milk in 24 hours to maintain your supply after your supply has regulated. And we'll talk more about supply regulation later. But this is just rough numbers. I always say don't go off of don't be like, this is like the gospel truth. You can only pump this many times or nurse this many times. But you can kind of see this and be like, oh, I have a smaller storage capacity. But this is the minimum number of times. And usually this is after you have already established your supply. So there's a better charts out there. I wasn't able to get them all on here. So just Google magic number by Nancy Moorbacher. And there's some great graphics out there to explain it more. So let's go into the myths. So I've already talked about this, but most moms struggle to make enough milk. I am so sorry for that typo there. But most moms struggle to make enough milk. We're going to be talking about this. I think you've already kind of gotten my opinion on that, but we'll just dive even deeper. Myth number 2 is that you need a freezer full of milk. And if you don't have a freezer full of milk, you are not making enough milk. You are not doing enough. And myth number 3, that breast milk supply can dry up out of nowhere. I see this a lot on Instagram. People say, my supply just dried up overnight. I don't have enough milk, things like that. And while that can happen, it's usually, there's more to the story than you would imagine. I don't see too many moms go from making tons of milk to waking up in the morning and there being no milk left. Usually it's a gradual process with different decisions being made and different situations going on, because milk supply is very, I can't remember think of the word, but it does, I'm so sorry, I can't think of the word right now. It is reactive to situations and things around you, but usually it takes time for those things to build up, because sometimes we'll say you need to wait 3 days of power pumping or whatever to see results. And that's because it does take time for the body to respond to changes you're making. And that's for good and bad changes. And I see some people popping on. So again, if you have questions, put them in the chat box. I will answer them at the end, and be sure to introduce yourself as well. I love helping moms in every stage of breastfeeding, regardless of their goals. And I'm just meeting you where you're at, because I believe that you can make breastfeeding work in many different ways. And my goal is never to make you do what I want you to do, but to help you decide what you want to do and create your plan around that. These are just some things. One mom said, I feel relieved. Thanks for your support. I was feeling defeated. These are just some different people I've worked with. And I love this one at the bottom where she said, spending time with you felt like a step in the right direction for not just Owen, but for maternal care postpartum as well. You are not only are you a lactation consultant, but you moonlight as a bit of a therapist as well. I would never claim to be a therapist, but I really try to focus on your mental health and what's going to help you. So not to toot my own horn, I have so many things I can learn, but I am very grateful for those of you that allow me to help you. So let's jump into the 5 reasons that I see moms accidentally hurting their milk supply. So the first one is scheduled feeds. I know this can be controversial, and I always say, do what works best for you, but do it with an informed mindset. So this might be you. You feed your baby based on the clock, not on their cues. Maybe the hospital was like, you should only feed every 3 hours, or you see other people going 5 hours without nursing, or you think you can't feed your baby if they just nursed. And if that's you, do not worry, because it was me too. I just fed my son. My first son was every 3 hours. I would not feed him earlier than that. And it's just because that's what they told me in the hospital. And looking back, I often say now that if I had not listened to that, if I had just fed him on demand, I probably would have had a much happier baby and a little bit chubbier baby, because he struggled with some weight gain. But it's very normal to have this situation, because I think we're just told that babies are here, they're born, and they need to be pushed into your lifestyle, and that you don't need to adapt. They just need to adapt to you. But something something I love to say is that after your baby's born, they just came from a place where they knew no hunger. They were constantly nourished. So it can be kind of an alarming thing when they're born and they're like, I don't know when I'm going to get fed next. Um, and scheduled feeds, unfortunately, this is not how breastfeeding is designed to work. Your breasts are designed to make milk based on your baby's demand. And your baby is very intuitive, and they are designed to tell your breasts how much milk to make. So if they are showing that they want to nurse more, this can be a sign, many reasons, but often can be because they're trying to increase your supply or because they just know that you need more milk. So when we have arbitrary at times that you need to nurse or pump, and it's not based on your individual baby and your individual circumstances, this can really hurt your supply, either like make it too much or too little. So as I already talked about, everyone has a different storage capacity. So if a mom has a low storage capacity and she's being told, oh, you can just nurse every 4 hours, that can really have a detrimental impact on her milk supply. On the flip side, there's moms who do have a large storage capacity. And if she's like, oh, I have to feed every 2 hours, she might end up with a baby that's drinking too much milk. And she could induce more of an oversupply if she is having so much of too much milk. That's also something that is to keep in mind, is that sometimes with storage capacity, there are some moms that can pump a lot of milk. They produce a ton of milk and they are never uncomfortable. And then there's moms who cannot do that and they have clogged ducts galore. They produce so much milk, but they're just doing the same things as this other mom. But it's because their storage capacity, their breasts aren't designed to hold as much milk as that other mom might have. So this is a comment that I got on Instagram the other day. It was on a video about this exact topic. And I asked, have you ever been told that your baby should only nurse every 3 hours? This mom said, yes, they did. It killed my milk supply, therefore my breastfeeding. This was in response to another comment from a mom whose baby was in the NICU. And this is a very common situation there where sometimes there's great lactation support, but they are very much regimented in their schedules for the NICU. And this can be difficult if you are being told your baby can only nurse now for many good reasons. Sometimes they can't nurse, or that you should only pump X amount of minutes, or any number of things. So having those arbitrary times can make it very difficult to produce the milk that you need for your body. So if you're ready for mistake number 2, throw up an emoji in the comments and we will move on. I just love sharing all of these because for me, I'm like, woo, this is amazing. I'm like learning so much when I've learned all these things. So I really hope that that is kind of how you're feeling. But some of you may already know all this stuff because you're all very smart. Next, the next mistake is pumping too much or too little. I see this happen a lot. Pumping can be a really tricky thing. There are moms that exclusively pump. There are moms that never want to pump, and it can be really tricky to navigate this. Pumping is a necessity for many moms, and I absolutely support that in every way that I can if that's the situation. However, pumping too much or too little can actually be a recipe for disaster. So the first example, baby was nursing well, nursing fantastic actually, but the mom I was working with saw all of her friends pumping and she thought she had to too. She's like, okay, why am I the only one that's not pumping? Like, I guess I'm supposed to be pumping to have more milk. She ended up with a huge oversupply, mastitis, and a baby that struggled to nurse, and just in this perpetual cycle of thinking she wasn't making enough milk. A lot of people think, oh, oversupplies aren't a big deal. If I just need to make as much milk as I can. I actually saw someone on Instagram, an influencer, saying, don't listen to people saying that you shouldn't induce an oversupply. They don't know what they're talking about. I can tell you, I know what I'm talking about because I have worked with many moms who have had oversupplies, and it's a different challenge than a low milk supply, but it can be very difficult and just make you want to quit because of some of the things that can happen. Example number 2 is a mom started having dad give bottles to help out throughout the day and at night. Great dads. I work with a lot of moms who have wonderful partners and dads involved that really just want to help. But sometimes this help is not as helpful as you think. Mom didn't realize that she had to pump in place, and her supply took a major hit. And I see this happening a lot. This is something that happened to me or could have happened to me with my second. My pediatrician actually said, "Oh, just give several bottles. Just have your husband give a couple bottles during the day. You don't need to worry about pumping. You need to rest." And I appreciated her concern, but I was like, I knew enough at that point, and there's actually a lactation consultant in the room, and you could tell she was just like, "Don't do that." Um, but I knew that that was not going to be something that was going to help me to breastfeed for the long term. So if you are there's times where you need to pump and there's times when you shouldn't pump. If you are breastfeeding your baby directly from the breast around the clock, they're growing well, they're generally happy, you don't need to pump unless you are giving a bottle. If your baby is struggling to nurse, they're not transferring enough milk, which transferring means how much milk they drink while they're breastfeeding. Someone asked me the other day what transferring meant. So hopefully that answers that question if you have it. But it's just a tricky situation, and pumping can be necessary, can be not necessary. I just never want a mom to cut that baby's breastfeeding well who doesn't want to pump to go, "Oh, I have to pump," and then adds in a whole slew of issues or just extra things that they don't need to do. So imagine how much better you'd feel if you knew when and how to pump so you don't fall into either of these traps. And I will tell you, it is possible to figure that out. It just depends on the mom, and I highly recommend working with somebody for that. I just want to remind you that you can do this. You can breastfeed. It may look different from everybody. It's going to look different from your mom or your friend or the influencer on Instagram that you follow. But I love this message I got from a mom where she said, "Today my second child turned 1, which means I reached my goal of exclusively nursing and pumping for 1 year. Thank you so much for your help to help me reach this goal." And at the end of the day, it's not me that is doing these things. It's these moms, and they just needed somebody to help guide them and help them to block out all of the million voices that they are constantly hearing throughout the day. So mistake number 3 is early sleep training, another controversial topic. I tend to stay away from sleep training because I know that it really brings up a lot of emotions, and people that are upset that you're sleep training and the people that are upset if you don't sleep train. There's a lot of sleep training accounts on Instagram that try to give breastfeeding advice, but I have worked with a number of moms that have followed some of these very popular programs, and then they had difficulty producing milk and they weren't sure why, even though this popular milk or trainer told them, "Oh, this is completely compatible with breastfeeding." So let's dive into this. And I promise you, whatever you choose to do is up to you. So modern parenting tells you that babies need to sleep as soon as possible, that they should not be waking up throughout the night, and that you should make them sleep as soon as possible. But this goes against how milk supply and infant growth works, and just how infants work in general, and humans. So why? Is the big question, and I'm going to answer it. Milk supply is based on supply and demand, and it's run by hormones, which can vary depending on the time of day. If you decrease demand, you will likely see a decrease in supply. This is not a blanket rule for everybody, but generally it is what happens. And so a lot of times when we prematurely cut out those sleep training, or we cut out those night sessions, that can be a good like 6 to 12 hours without any stimulation to the breast. And that can be really difficult for a lot of moms who are trying to produce milk. Another thing to keep in mind is that prolactin production is actually highest in the early morning hours, usually like between 3 and 5 a.m. And so if you aren't producing milk for a long period of time at night, that can cause your milk supply to drop. This isn't to say, you just have to suffer through and just be super tired forever. There are plenty of things you can do to help your milk supply and still get enough rest. But I think sometimes it is kind of questioning how we approach parenting in in our modern day world. Um, where children, babies are a problem to be fixed and not something that we adapt to help them as well. And so it can, removing those night removal or those milk removals at night can hurt your supply. And again, if you need your sleep and you're really struggling, I will never tell you, oh, you have to keep nursing no matter what. But I would look into different options and look at ways that you can support your baby to sleep that still encourage those night removals, and that gives you that nice chunk of sleep. I always recommend, I say like going 5 hours. Sometimes it's 5 to 6, and it can depend on the age of the baby. But it's really individual to your storage supply, the age of your baby, and your baby's needs. So here's a quick win. Some of you will say, well, my baby just started sleeping through the night at 2 weeks and I didn't do anything. And I will often be asked, like, what do I do if my baby's sleeping through the night? Should I get up and pump? I would really like to just sleep. And while my babies never did this, I don't know who these unicorn babies are that sleep that well. But I'm really very happy for you. I will say it depends on the age of the baby and the situation, but something that I will sometimes recommend is either doing a dream feed, which is where before you go to bed, just go get your baby and nurse them while they're asleep. A lot of people don't think that they can nurse a baby who's sleeping, but you can. And so dream feeds can be great, or you can try drinking like 16 to 24 ounces of breast milk, or not drinking breast milk, of drinking water. I mean, I guess you could drink your own breast milk if you want, but drinking water before you go to bed. And this this basically just makes it so you wake up naturally and pee in the middle of the night, and then you can pump at that time. I also find that wearable pumps can be amazing at nighttime because you don't have to get up. You don't have to worry about it. I like Mom Cozy because they're affordable. I think they work just as well as the really expensive ones. So that's just an option. But again, something to talk about with your lactation consultant to determine what's best for your baby and your supply. So medications and supplements. This is one that I see a lot. People taking medications, or they stop taking medications, or they stop breastfeeding because they can't take medications. We're not going to talk as much about that one, but we're going to be talking about the impact that some of these things can have. The biggest ones that I see, so most supplements and medications can be taken safely with breastfeeding, shouldn't hurt your supply, but there are some that can actually tank your supply. The biggest ones are birth control. So usually that's combination birth control that has progesterone and estrogen. Many people will say that like the mini pill's safe, or the like the Mirena, similar one that just has progesterone in it will be safe. I will say that I have seen a number of moms who have lost their supply overnight with the Mirena. And I don't know exactly why. Some people do and some people don't. But I always recommend waiting to see to start birth control until your supply is a little bit more established. Combination birth control is something that I do see frequently that dries up milk supply. So you want to be careful with that. One thing though that does dry up milk supply often and most of the time is pregnancy. So you kind of have to balance that type of thing. I'm a big fan of not a big plan. I'm a big fan of like the FAM method and temperature tracking. I've mentioned this before, but I use a temp drop tracker myself, which is helpful for like tracking your cycle, especially if your milk hasn't, or your period hasn't come back. But it's just something to be aware of. Decongestants can also really dry up your supply. It's something I will sometimes recommend for moms that are trying to dry up their supply. So especially this time of year when you might be sick, be careful about the medications that you're taking. There are cold medications that you can take that are safe, that won't drop your supply, but just be aware there are some. Then there's different herbs. So the most popular ones that you might hear are peppermint and sage. So peppermint, I don't want you to go throw out all your candy canes right now. Usually it has to be in larger quantities, and it has to be actual peppermint oil. It's not spearmint because it is the menthol that is in the peppermint. But some moms are more sensitive than others though. And I always say, if you have a sensitive supply, I might be a little bit more careful. There's not a lot of research on that though. The only research that's out there for the most part is a Facebook poll that was done and with a little bit of follow-up afterwards. But if you're familiar with research, you will know that that is probably at the bottom tier of research. Um, and then sage. So both of those are very common to be used in like no more milk teas. I don't think I would be drinking a couple cups of peppermint or sage tea a day. But a little candy cane, a Chick-fil-A or Chick-fil-A peppermint shake probably will be just fine. So this was a message I got from somebody whose supply was dropping, and she said, I realized it was because of an Indian herb my mom had given me. So she stopped it and her milk supply recovered. So sometimes it's just things like if your supply drops, which I'll talk more about a good way to go over this, but if your supply drops, kind of going back and thinking, what happened to my supply? Um, and sometimes just going through the past few days, seeing if there's a new herb or a new food you tried, and it will sometimes that can give you a clue. And again, if you're just popping on, put your questions in the chat. I will answer them afterwards. I will definitely get to all of those. Um, let's see. So mistake number 5 is topping up after breastfeeding. This is really hard because the breasts don't have markers on them. And so it's hard to know how much your baby got. And obviously you can do weighted feeds. That's not something I would be obsessive about. I can say that because I was obsessive about it. I did weighted feeds for my son for like 3 months straight for every feed. I do not recommend doing that. But I do see the top up trap happening quite a bit. So let's dive into that a little bit. So this is the top up trap. You feel like you don't have enough milk. You don't think your baby's getting enough at the breast. You top up with a bottle of either pumped milk or formula. Your baby has extra milk from that bottle that they don't necessarily need. But that makes them so they go longer without nursing. So the baby is suckling less from the breast. They might sleep more. They might have their stomach kind of stretched out a little bit. And then you make less milk. And it repeats because then you're like, oh, the baby's not getting enough. I need to give them the bottle. And it just keeps repeating and repeating. And sometimes the baby will start to associate fullness with the bottle rather than with the breast. And this can be really tricky. And it's not something that I'm like, don't ever top up afterwards, but it's something that I would work with a lactation consultant on. And also to recognize how breastfeeding works. Babies can nurse on more than one side. I was working with a mom yesterday who was told at the hospital just to nurse on one side. And after that, she was pumping and then giving a supplement. And she's like, I didn't know I could nurse on more than one side. I just kind of had to hold my tongue a little bit because I just can't believe when sometimes that can be appropriate, but it's mainly for people that have massive oversupplies. But it's a really tricky situation. And babies, they like to nurse. Sometimes they fall asleep quickly and then they wake up and you're like, well, they nursed. So why did they fall asleep and want to wake up again? But that's because of a hormone that gets released when you're eating, and it gets released at about 2 times during a nursing session. So about 10 minutes in and 30 minutes in, and that will put them to sleep. It kind of makes them feel like they're satiated, but then they'll wake up again 10 minutes later, 20 minutes later, because they're like, oh, I'm actually hungry again. And so I always say, just put the baby back to the breast. Obviously, you need to follow your baby's cues. You need to make sure that they're not getting dehydrated. But for a lot of babies, just putting them back to the breast is a-okay. The bottle is necessary in many situations. I work with bottle feeding all of the time. And it's tricky because babies do gain preferences. I don't say that it's bottle confusion. Most of the time, especially if they're going back and forth, usually it's a preference if you are equally giving it to them. Sometimes I do think they can get confused if you've been giving a bottle like exclusively and you're trying to get them back to the breast because they're like, oh, what's going on here? I don't know how to nurse at the breast. There's no food here. But if they're equally going back and forth and they start to kind of act like they need that bottle, it's because they've associated it most likely with fullness and because it's easier. So that's a topic for a whole other time, is bottle feeding and pace feeding. But this is something that I do see lowering mom supplies when they don't need it to be. So those were the 5 mistakes, but now we're going to talk about a bonus tip, which is you're relying on social media for all your supply questions and issues. I feel a little bit like a hypocrite because I am always posting things on Instagram. I am very active on social media with sharing information, but I'm also very careful about hopefully portraying the fact that I'm just giving general advice that cannot be applied to every single situation. And I think sometimes we think, oh, I don't need to work with a lactation consultant. I don't need to go to breastfeeding group because I have social media. But almost every single mom I work with tells me social media was making this so much harder because there are so many messages. There are people out there that say that they are lactation experts, and some of them are not. Um, that's a whole other topic, though. So you just have to be careful about the information that you're getting and making sure that it makes sense with all of these things that I said. Breastfeeding is not as complicated as it seems. Sometimes it can be very difficult to initiate and keep going. Absolutely understand that because I've been through that myself and I've seen it with many moms. But I think social media can make it very, very difficult. So just be careful about the information that you are consuming and make sure it lines up with how breast milk production works. If you hear something that doesn't quite, if they're like, you can go 10 hours without pumping or nursing and you'll be just fine, or just pump like 2 times a day and you'll be just fine, maybe ignore that advice and work with somebody that can help you on your situation. So this is a post that was on Instagram the other day from a popular pumping company. If you're on my email list, I mentioned it. So they said, if you want your breast milk stash to look like this, and then they showed a huge freezer stash, then buy our pump. And I was really, really not upset. I was just really sad by this because it's a company that I actually really like. And I was like, this type of thing helps no one because I work with moms every day who see stuff like this and think, I don't have enough milk because I only have one bag in the freezer. Fortunately, people kind of talked to them and they said, we are so sorry for posting this. But this is the type of thing that you might see on social media that can really undermine your milk supply and make you think you are not making enough. So just be careful about who you follow. I personally think I share pretty good advice. I try to be very careful. I found that, as I've gone through all my different certifications to become I'm an IBCLC, the more careful I've gotten with my information and what I share. So often I will see people that maybe don't have as much training, not saying I know everything, but sometimes I see people that don't have quite as much training giving crazy advice and is often based off of a lot more of their personal experience rather than clinical experience and what's based on like science. And that's not to say that there's not new information that is coming out constantly, because there is. It's just be careful. That's all I want to say. And what I want to emphasize, if you take anything away from this, is just be careful about the information that you're getting on social media about breastfeeding and pretty much anything. This is somebody who commented on my post earlier this week, and she was just sharing her personal experience. But she said, "And no, my baby doesn't eat at night and sleeps an average of 12 hours and basically has most of her life. She is now 7 months and my supply is still the same as far as I know. Every morning when she wakes up, I pump one side and I get 8 to 10 ounces. That has never diminished. And she eats on the other side and still gaining weight. She is at the 92nd percentile. I only pump the one time a day to store up and breastfeed the rest of the time. And no, I never pumped at night." So I don't know what her intent was of her comments, if she was trying to say that I was wrong for saying that you usually need to nurse at night, or I think this was on my post about breastfeeding during the day or at night, or how frequently you nurse, something like that. But it was a little bit, I don't know. It reminded me of, if somebody saw this, they might think, well, then I'm going to do that. And I will tell you, if most people do this, they will see a drop in their supply. And so that's why Facebook groups, you have to be careful. I run a Facebook group. It has over 22,000 moms in it. And people get mad at me sometimes for deleting comments or not approving certain things. But that's because my number one goal is to keep you and your baby safe and to help you optimize breastfeeding as much as possible. So sometimes there is advice that just should not be applied to the general public. So here's a little spoiler. If you're feeling like your supply is too far gone, I don't know if spoiler is the right word, but don't believe the myth that you can't increase your supply after a certain amount of weeks. There's no doubt that the first few weeks are very valuable and important for establishing your milk supply. However, I have seen moms increase their milk supply at any stage of breastfeeding. It just usually requires digging deep to see why the supply is low and making a plan personalized to them and going from there. Okay, so let's go back to the myths. So most moms don't make enough milk. I think that we've established that that is not the case. Um, Many moms don't produce enough milk, but it's not because they can't produce enough milk. And sometimes they are producing enough milk, but they think they aren't because of any number of reasons. That you need a huge freezer stash. And I didn't really touch on this a ton, but you really don't need a huge freezer stash of milk. In my experience, most moms that have a huge freezer full of milk end up donating it, which is awesome, or throwing it away. If you're going back to work, I usually recommend looking for like a 2 to 3 day freezer stash or emergency supply, which would be probably like anywhere from 24 to 30 ounces. And kind of going from there, but you do not need a huge freezer stash. And of course, there's always that mom that's like, I'm so glad I had my freezer stash. But there's also the many moms that are like, I wish I had not pumped that much. And then that breast milk just dries up out of nowhere. Very rarely does this happen. And usually there are small things happening that cause this to happen. Let's see. And somebody just joined in, but I will be sending out the recording of this. So if you just joined in, you'll get to see this later, but I will answer your questions. So what can you do about your milk supply? Obviously, one of the biggest things is just increased stimulation to the breast by nursing. This is your baby often is the best way to increase your supply, or you can pump and have a good pumping plan. Work with a lactation consultant that is savvy in low supply and isn't just like, well, you gave it a good try, too bad. I don't think most lactation consultants are like that, but working with somebody who maybe has a higher degree of knowledge when it comes to milk supply and how to help your supply can be really valuable. Blood work can also be helpful. I see doctors being resistant to prescribe blood work for moms sometimes when I recommend it. And I don't really understand that because blood tests are very low risk. It's something I actually am able to offer through my practice. I have worked with a company that makes it so I can do that. But sometimes there are blood levels that we want to check to make sure they are optimized as much as possible. And then have a pumping plan that is appropriate for you. Sometimes I think moms are just told, you just need to start pumping and increase your supply. And that can be really, really difficult to kind of overcome. So this was a mom that I worked with and we just did a weaning consult. So her baby was struggling to nurse in the beginning, and now she's struggling to not nurse. But I was very grateful for when she reached out and told me like how much I helped her. She said Katie was able to get me back on the right track to find support I needed to help her baby latch correctly and continue their breastfeeding journey until 16 months when the pain returned. She helped me troubleshoot the problems and find the solution to the sudden change. When I was ready to give up, she helped counsel me back to sanity and find the right treatment to get us back on track. And I think that this shows the value of having continued ongoing support with somebody that knows you and knows your situation, because you were not meant to breastfeed on your own. We were meant to have a community. And I think it's so hard when you try to do it on your own, just piecing together information from just different random places online. You can do it. That's kind of what I did. But it's hard, and it's better to have somebody that can help you. So now that I have gone through the presentation, I would like to ask you a question. Would you like me to help you? Would feel more confident in your breastfeeding journey? Because that is why I'm here. So option one, again, sorry for the typo, not sure what happened there. Option number one is to figure it out on your own with Dr. Google, different mixed messages from social media, your doctor, your family, friends, and sometimes feel more stressed than you started. That's not going to happen to everyone. You might be a great self-learner and figure out everything on your own. But even as a lactation consultant, I would not figure out my breastfeeding problems on my own. I would absolutely reach out to a lactation consultant, because sometimes we get so tunnel focused that we can't see the issues ourselves, and having someone else that can point things out can make a big difference. Option number two is to follow a tried and true path for fuss-free breastfeeding and join a supportive community led by a lactation professional, which would be me or somebody else. And remember, watching to the end is how you're going to get your milk supply ebook. I'll post the link at the end. So I just wanted to introduce my new program that I am launching today. It's called Fuss Free Breastfeeding, and it's something that I believe is different than anything else that is available on the market. There's a lot of courses out there, a lot of support groups, but I have seen them all, and I have tried to create something that I think is really, truly valuable for you. Um, so I hope you will humor me as I share a little bit about it. And at the end, we will have the Q&A and the milk supply. So this is just the basics of what you can get when you sign up. I'll go more into it as we go through the next slides, but I'm trying to add a lot of value, and I'm really, really excited to share it with you because I feel very passionate about this. So I want to help you create the breastfeeding journey that you deserve to stop the information overload and get the support that actually leads to success. I read a study recently or an article showing that parents in today's times really struggle with information overload, and it actually leads to like not making decisions and not actually improving, and it just makes things worse. So I've been on Instagram for a long time sharing stuff, and I love when I have moms come to me and say things like this. Thank you so much for always answering my questions. Your account has been an amazing resource for me as a new mom, and your blog and education have sometimes been the reason I continue to breastfeed and haven't given up. So with fuss-free breastfeeding, you'll get access to resources from pregnancy through weaning, so you can stop hunting through social media and Google to piece together what might be good information or might not. So this mom said, you really kept me informed and educated breastfeeding and pumping. Just following your page has improved my breastfeeding journey by 110% now that I've delivered. And I do share a lot of free information on Instagram and obviously this workshop. So I hope that you find good value in that, because I do try to provide resources for those that can't afford them. So you'll also get tools and proven strategies to help you confidently make informed decisions for you and your baby that you can feel good about, that I teach my one-on-one clients on a regular basis. So this mom, she said, great breastfeeding support. She helped me through my slow supply journey, and I am exclusively breastfeeding again. So you also get access to a lactation professional, me, who has not just studied breastfeeding and worked with countless moms, but has experienced the ups and downs of breastfeeding. And I think this gives you the perfect combination of professional and personal experience, because I think that it's really valuable to kind of mesh those together, where you can show the empathy towards people that are struggling while still being able to kind of help them pop out and see the big picture and give them advice that's based on research. So here's a little bit more about what's included with the fuss-free breastfeeding community. You'll get it's a private community where you can ask questions and find answers fast. I use that through, and this number in the bottom is just kind of what was valued out. That's not the cost right now, just for this. But you can find answers fast. We use the Mighty Networks for the community aspect. Eventually, everything will be in there, but right now it's just like the where we'll do the live events and where you can chat and talk to other people and myself. There'll be weekly live support groups with me to connect with other moms and get those basic questions answered and to learn from each other. And then each month, this is what I'm very excited about, is that there's going to be a monthly deep dive session on a variety of topics that will have you walking away feeling more confident and educated. So it will be sessions like this, but more in depth, and it will be based on the community needs, what you're voting for, what you want to learn from me. These are things that I could easily charge probably $100 for a workshop for, but it will be included with the membership. And so you're going to get a ton of great information just from these workshops alone. And the support groups. I think the support groups are going to be very beneficial, so you can learn from other moms and kind of see that you're not so alone, because it can be a really lonely journey. This is something else I'm including that I'm so excited about. It's the fuss-free milk supply and self-assessment. This has a bunch of videos about milk supply, increasing milk supply, how milk supply works, decreasing milk supply, things like that. Galactagogues, insufficient glandular tissue, medicines, just everything. But what I've included is an assessment that I've created where you can discover whether or not your milk supply is normal or not based on my step-by-step assessment. And there's different paths depending on your situation. So if you're pregnant, if your milk supply has always been low, it never fully came in, it suddenly dropped, or you just want to know what's normal. So it's not to create a customized plan for you, but it's supposed to be designed to help you determine what your next steps should be. So I'm super excited about this. And alone, I was thinking about selling this for $97 on its own, which you could buy it on your own if that you just want that. But I'm including it with the membership too, for everybody that signs up. Then there's the breastfeeding ebook bundle, which includes the Clogged Up Cure, which is one of my favorite ebooks I've created, newborn breastfeeding, oral restrictions demystified, and mastering your milk supply, which you are getting if you're watching to the end of this video. Next is the fuss-free latch video. This is a video I just created. So it shows my step-by-step approach to pain-free, comfortable latching. There is a demonstration with my fake baby and a real baby, and it's easy to follow and replicate. My strategy has helped tons of moms instantly improve their breastfeeding experience. And there's an explanation of how reflexes play a huge part in latching. And bear with me, I'm almost through this. Fuss-free flange fitting, which also has a demonstration of what a too large flange looks like and what it looks like once you get closer to your right size. There's tips for doing self-fitting at home, advice based on current recommendations that IBCLs are finding much more success with, information on elastic nipples and different types of flanges that are available. And then you can also do this at home and get asked for feedback in the Facebook group, or not the Facebook group. That's one of the things that's nice about this is that my community page is completely off of social media. It is just an app you'll download, and eventually everything, including all my courses and all my videos, will be in there. So this could easily be near $1,000, $1,200 a year, but you're not going to pay anywhere close to that because I think that's robbery. And I want to make this more affordable. So for attending today, you are at the launch. This is a new program, but there's only 100 spots available for the founder's price before we may consider increasing it. So for fuss-free breastfeeding, to include the monthly deep dive sessions, the weekly live support group, the community platform, the fuss-free milk supply and a self-assessment, along with the latching, flange fitting video, and the ebooks, is $397 for an entire year. So you will get access to all of this, access to the community, to all of the sessions, all of the groups, and just have an amazing support network where you can turn and for all those questions you have, and just to feel part of a community. Or you can pay $147 quarterly. That includes everything but these courses, which I will talk more about. That's included for just the people that pay yearly, but $147 for 4 months is awesome. And so you will get access to so much of this just by doing that. So I want to talk a little bit more about membership versus lifetime access versus a consult. So some people will say, well, I can buy this other course for lifetime access, which you absolutely can. And I used to offer those. Some of my things, I do offer that if you want to buy just like piece together things. But I feel that a membership is more valuable for a few reasons. I don't know if you're like me, but when I buy a course, I forget about it. I have bought many courses over the course of my life, and I will tell you, I have not finished the vast majority of them. And that's because I just bought it. I'm not that invested. I'm not going to have recurring fees or anything like that. With a membership, not only are you more invested in getting as much out of it as possible during the time you're in it, but I am invested in you. A lot of times with a course, I could just give it to you, drop you, and you won't hear from me again. But with a membership, I am there being active. I want to make sure that you are getting as much value as possible. And I am constantly adding new content because I think so you can get more information as it goes. So it's more incentivizing for me with memberships and for you. With lifetime access too, that's a little overwhelming. You're not going to be breastfeeding for the rest of your life. Often you just need help for 4 months or for 6 months. And that's why I created this model, so you can have it for that period of time you need, and then you can move on. And then comparing this to a consult, I will not say that this replaces a one-on-one consult. There are situations where you do need to have one-on-one support, and I cannot give that in a group setting or through a community chat. So sometimes I will see people do a consult, and then I'm going to say that this membership would be the next best step for them to have that kind of ongoing community support. But sometimes consults are important. They're very important for many situations. But you do get discounted consults when you are part of this community through me if it's not covered through insurance. So that's another added benefit. So if you go yearly, if you pay the yearly price of $397, you get the fuss-free breastfeeding course vault as well, which includes fuss-free breastfeeding foundations, fuss-free pumping, fuss-free solids, and fuss-free weaning. And these are tons of videos that are going to help you through your entire breastfeeding journey. And I sell all these courses on their own, but it's included with the cost of the yearly membership. You also are going to get my breastfeeding meal plan, which is very, very popular. It has tons of recipes. It has drink recipes, it has smoothie recipes, it has lunch recipes. It's all broken down. The actual meal plan itself has a lot of great information in it as well. And then I love it. I think a lot of people have really enjoyed it over the years that I've had it. So again, no matter what you sign up for, yes, I will post a link. Here, I'll post a link right here for those that want to sign up right now, but I will post a link towards the end as well. So if you sign up, you're going to get a monthly workshop with me. And this is awesome. I think it's awesome. I'm super excited because it's going to be based off of what you want. And they're ones that I might offer to other people, but they're going to be paying more than you because yours is just included. And let's see. Sorry, I didn't press the next button. The weekly Q&A support group. This is live. This is where you can connect with other moms. We can laugh, we can cry, we can talk about all the crazy advice out there, but it's going to be an awesome, awesome community. And I cannot wait for you to be a part of it because I learn from you. I learn from other moms all the time. So again, you're going to get access to the private breastfeeding community platform on the Mighty networks. No social media needed. The milk supply self-assessment, which I am so excited about. The access to lactation professionals like myself, and I hope to bring on other ones as well to kind of help give you even more information and value. And then fuss-free latching, which is a great video. My husband was just editing these last night, and he was wonderful for doing that for me. But they're short and sweet and to the point. Fuss-free flange fitting. And again, these are all things that I do teach on a regular basis, and the breastfeeding ebook bundle. And this solution will work for you. I do not guarantee that you will meet every breastfeeding goal you have and make tons of milk and never have a clogged duct, but I can guarantee that you will find a successful or a supportive network that is going to support you regardless of what your decisions are. And it's new. If you join today, it's going to be just a few of us in there, but that's probably the best time to get in because you're going to get more support. But you'll have the blueprint for breastfeeding from first latch to latch. Oh, I really need to work on my editing skills sometimes. I promise my information is good. Sometimes my PowerPoint is a little bit weird. So if you go yearly, your price is going to be $397. And that's going to include everything I said. So the workshops, the support group, the fuss-free milk supply, the community stuff, the ebooks, but you're also going to get the meal plan and all of those courses. And I know it might seem like a lot, and it is. I do not discount that at all. It's a lot of money. But I also say, how much are you spending on cookies or on lactation cookies or on Starbucks or on things that may not matter as much? Like if you think about it, it comes down to, let's see how much that is a month. That's $33 a month. So see if that's something that you can work into your budget. But then if it's something that is valuable to you. Next is quarterly price. It's $147, and that includes everything but the meal plan and the meal plan and the courses. And so that's every 4 months. So you get 4 months of so much great support, and it's a lot more affordable, and I think you'll get a lot of value out of it as well. So get started today. If you get ready to start, just click the link in the chat, and we can get started from there. So there's only 100 slots available at this price. Then we may increase it after that. Who knows? So now it's time for the Q&A. I appreciate you joining me, sticking through till the end. I will post a link for you pretty soon, but I'm going to start at the top with the questions I've already gotten. And if you have other questions, start typing them in, and I will get to as many as I possibly can. So let's see. First question. So a lot of people said, does PCOS, is it related to low milk supply? And yes, it can absolutely be related to low milk supply. If you have PCOS, it doesn't necessarily mean you will have low milk supply, but often it's because your hormones are maybe a little bit off. You may be having blood sugar issues. Your basically comes down to hormones. So PCOS, I do see that associated with not just your milk supply, but sometimes associated with insufficient glandular tissue. So I would highly recommend, if you have PCOS, doing a prenatal consult to go over your situation. I read a study once, and I have not found it recently, but it was like 1/3 of moms that have PCOS struggle, 1/3 produce enough, and 1/3 have an oversupply. So I need to find that study again because it might not be legit, but it can. I do see PCOS impacting milk supply quite a bit. Gestational diabetes, can that affect milk supply? It can. I think it's more because often in the beginning, when your baby's born, when you have gestational diabetes, they are checking their blood sugar constantly for that first 24 hours or so. And if there's numbers that they don't like, they are pretty quick to push you to do formula. Sometimes they will have a donor milk, but I find that they really like formula in the hospital because it just fixes the problem really fast. But it can make it more difficult for you to get that initiation of breastfeeding. And sometimes gestational diabetes, you can get it as a fluke. I had gestational diabetes myself. And I will tell you, my first 24 hours was one of the first 24 hours. It was a miserable time for me after my son was born, because that's a story for another time. Maybe that's one I'll share in the community, because it's a long story. But sometimes if you have it because of other issues, because diabetes or insulin resistance can be related to low milk supply. So it's something just to be aware of. I wouldn't say necessarily if you have gestational diabetes, it's going to mean that you're going to have low supply. How often can I pump milk in one day? It really just depends on the situation. Some moms are very sensitive and they cannot pump more than once a day or at all. Excuse me. But then other moms can pump multiple times a day and not have an issue. It really depends on the situation, how much you're nursing. That's definitely something I would do in a one-on-one consult or consult with a consult about. Is my baby sleeping through the night causing a drop in supply? It's very possible. If you are experiencing a drop in supply right now, it may be due to them waking up at night, which is really hard. But you can try and add in a pumping session at night, adjust things. Like I said, prolactin is highest at night, so you're going to see a higher milk output if you are stimulating the breast at night in most situations. I don't want to pump. I just want to give baby the breast whenever baby wants. Totally fine. If baby's growing well, it's working for you, just keep nursing. You don't need to get the pump out. My second baby, we had to pump with, but my other two, I think I pumped like once or twice. And that's just my personal experience. I work with moms all the time where it just depends. I do find sometimes when you start to get that pump out and you're like, I got to do it all the time, it starts to lead to more issues. I'm unable to get enough milk out of my breast when I pump. Very common issue. Usually I find it's because of the pump settings or the flange. Flanges, getting the right size flange is really important. I always say, if you don't have a nipple, and this is not your areola. If you do not have a nipple that's the size of a quarter, you do not need to be using a 24 millimeter flange. So I do flange fittings, but also my flange fitting self-assessment is really helpful as well. Um, let's see. Does BMI affect milk supply? I have heard some people say that they think obesity or BMI or being overweight it can affect milk supply, and I think that's more if it's affecting um, like your hormones. I have heard that like if you had experienced childhood obesity and that was before you were in puberty, sometimes that is linked to insufficient glandular tissue. But I wouldn't say BMI necessarily means you're going to have issues with milk supply. It's just one of those that where it's like sometimes it happens. Can having a premature baby affect my milk supply? It can, especially if your baby's not nursing well, if they don't have enough strength to nurse well, if you've been separated, like if they're in the NICU, um, or you're having to pump on a regular basis and you're not like on a really ideal pumping schedule with a good pump that is fitted with the right flanges. But yes, I can see that being one of those situations where it can affect milk supply. And in my milk supply self-assessment, we do talk about that more because that is something that I see. Cluster feeding is basically when your baby is nursing in quick succession, pretty much one feed after another. They're like, stop nursing and then maybe take a break for a little while, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and then want to nurse again. This should not be happening around the clock, but it is very common to happen through growth spurts or earlier, like in the early afternoon. As long as your baby is content nursing at the breast, they're having enough diapers, their weight gain's good, cluster feeding is really a great thing, and it does not last forever. Power pumping is basically it mimics cluster feeding where you pump for 10 minutes on, 10 minutes off for 60 minutes. And it's not about the volume, but about the stimulation of the breast and telling your body to make more milk. It's not something I recommend just everyone doing just without working with a lactation consultant, but some people do find success. I see some lactation consultants saying that they hate power pumping and for various reasons. I've seen it be helpful and have moms be successful with it, but I don't know. There's another method where you can take like a good 3-hour chunk of time and just pump for 10 minutes at the start of each hour. My daughter turned 1 yesterday. She loves solids, but gravitates more toward nursing. Is that bad? No, not bad. At 1, we do want to start to see more solids, less breast milk, but keep nursing and offering solids as much as you can, giving her a good nutrient dense diet, but there's nothing wrong with her still wanting to nurse. I know when I had my first son, I thought I would stop nursing at the age of 1. And then I didn't, because when he turned 1, I was like, he's still nursing 6 times a day. Baby is not going to wean today. And he did not wean till he was 2. But no, nothing wrong with that. I would focus on nutrient dense foods with what she does eat. And obviously if she's not eating any solids at all ever, especially like by the time she's like 15 months or something, maybe try to cut back a little bit, but I think you're probably doing just great. Does goat true increase storage capacity? So there is some research I think there's research, or I don't want to say research, but I think that there is showing that goat true can help to increase your glandular tissue. So that's something I sometimes do recommend to moms that we're working with that have insufficient glandular tissue. How do you know your baby is transferring enough? Baby has cut feeding time in half and will cry at the breast. Oh, it's so hard. It's a lot of it comes down to watching their diapers and recognizing that all crying doesn't necessarily mean that they're hungry. She might want comfort. She might be going through a growth spurt. I highly recommend the app. What's it called? The Wonder Weeks, because it is based on not just your growth. It's not based on the growth spurts, but developmental leaps. And I will say it is right on with all of my kids that I've used that app with. So that might explain some of the behavior. You can do weighted feeds, but I would not recommend doing that without being under the care of a lactation consultant. But a lot of it comes down to watching diapers, weight gain, and just offering the breast again if they want to nurse. And there's many reasons why a baby might do this, why they might be fussy at the breast. It could be an ear infection, could be illness, could be they're tired, overly tired, growth spurts, things like that. Peppermint soap, not a silly question. She said that was a silly question. It's not. I don't think that external peppermint soap is going to cause an issue. They actually showed research showing that peppermint for cracked nipples actually was really beneficial. So I don't think that, I think it's more that if you're ingesting it, because I was reading something, it was all sciencey and I didn't really understand it, but basically they speculate that the peppermint changes something in your system when you ingest it that might cause a low milk supply. Um, I've been told by my lactation consultant to supplement, but I don't know when to know. I don't know when to stop or cut back. So I would, any lactation consultant that is telling you to supplement should also give you support for cutting back. Um, so if she's not doing that, I would ask her for that. If you need a second opinion, I am here. I am happy to work with you. But it's usually a slow process. You just want to make sure you're not taking out too much. And it depends on why the baby is being supplemented as well. So I always say, if someone tells you to do something, ask them why they're telling you to do that. So I've been exclusively breastfeeding. My newborn is 5 weeks. It is normal to always have a dirty diaper for each diaper change. My newborn has never had just a wet diaper. It really just depends on the baby. Pooping habits are really tricky. Please don't believe the myth that babies use up all of the breast milk, and that's why some babies don't poop. Not true. You should be pooping every day, every baby, every human. Some babies do poop more. I've experienced that with my kids. My first was like every feed for like the first 2 years of his life. And then the other one was much less, and he's still that way. So you can look into things like probiotics, making sure that the gut flora, your gut flora is good and your baby's is as well. But I wouldn't say that that's necessarily a problem. Obviously, reach out to your doctor if you're concerned about that. My 7 weeks old was having a very rough morning. I'm so sorry. That's so hard. Is it possible to see a summary of the 5 things that hurt? Yes, I will send that out later with the replay of this. That's what my lactation consultant at the hospital told me. I'm not sure what she told you, but I'm sure it was something that I said that I was saying that they shouldn't say. Hospitals are, I should do a presentation on that sometime about all the things that hospitals say and do that I do not want them to do anymore because, I just am in charge. Just kidding. I'm 8-week postpartum and exclusively pumping. I'm pumping 7 to 8 times per day and only producing 8 ounces or 12 ounces. That is on the lower end. I would say make sure your pump is working correct, that you have the right flange size, and then also make sure you don't have anything like insufficient glandular tissue. There's a lot of different things you can do. So that's someone I would love to help you. If you need one-on-one help, I would be more than one to help you. Happy to help you. And we also might do some stuff in the community about that. I was able to increase my supply by 1.5 ounces at 10 weeks. 16 weeks now, lucky enough to be in Denver and get to personally work with Katie. Oh, I'm so glad you're on here. I was like, who is this? Well, you are awesome, Becca. Thank you for commenting. Does caffeine affect milk supply? I don't think it really does. It can cause your baby to have issues. But I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think it's going to affect your milk supply that much. You just need to be careful about I think they recommend like 200 to 300 milligrams. Is it safe to continue breastfeeding while pregnant again? It depends on the situation. If you are a high risk pregnancy, that can play into it. But generally, it is safe to continue breastfeeding while you're pregnant. Work with your OB, work with a lactation consultant, but many women do. Supply does tend to drop though, so just be aware of that. If planning on having 1 to 2 glasses of wine, when is the best time to breastfeed in relation? Usually it is going to be after if you're sober enough to drive, you're sober enough to breastfeed. That's the thing I go with. I don't usually try to give times. I do have a calculator on my website that you can use, but I think probably 2 hours is generally what people would say for that. I bottle feed 3 times a day when I'm at office and pump every 4 hours and will proceed with breastfeeding directly as I get. Sorry, let me read that again. I bottle feed 3 times a day when I'm at office and pump 4 hours and will proceed with breastfeeding directly as soon as I get home. Am I on the right track? Yeah, I mean, it would depend on the situation and everything, but I think that is a great place to start. But definitely reach out if you need help. My 3-month-old will eat on one side and then cries and refuses to latch on the other. If she won't continue, should I pump on the other side she didn't eat from? Should I pump on one side she didn't eat from? Should I pump 2 if she only eats? I would say yes if she's not nursing on one side to pump on that side. It obviously, I keep saying it depends on the situation, and it really does. But you can do that if you pump, if she only eats for 4 minutes. At 3 months, they can be more efficient, but if you feel like she didn't get a good feed, then yes, you should pump. I actually do that, hoping to send signals to my brain the baby is here and drinking milk. Yes, that's great. Because we definitely, if a baby normally eats on both sides and they don't, we want to continue that because breastfeeding is all about consistency and your body does have memories. It does respond to consistency. So that's really helpful. Um, Yes, I make sure to pump on the other side. You mentioned pumping too much. What does that look like? An oversupply or something else? Can pumping too much inhibit supply? Yes. So this is a tricky one because it's different for every mom. Some moms can pump just once a day, while others can pump like many, many times a day and not have issues. Sometimes I see it being like your breastfeeding. It's basically if you're breastfeeding and your baby is fully draining the breast, and then they are struggling to and then you're pumping after that. Sorry, I don't know. I was kind of going off on a weird tangent there. And then you're pumping after like all those feeds or multiple times a day, that might cause you to have a higher supply. If you have a higher storage capacity, this may not impact you as much, but it really, really depends on the mom and the baby. I can't give like blanket advice on what exactly that would look like to pump too much. I tend to switch my baby every 15 to 20 minutes. That's awesome. I always say there's no rule that says you have to you can only feed once per side. I sometimes will say feed them 4 times. Like if they're going back on the breast, keep going as long as their diapers are good. Let's see, baby, I alternate each side baby starts. Baby eats a lot on the first side, but only a bit on the second before falling asleep. Is this hurting supply? Not necessarily if this is what they are normally doing. We always look at what's normal for the baby and whatever they're doing, usually that's good for your supply. So I always say one side's dinner, the other's dessert. So I think it's great that you're switching back inside. That is usually what I recommend. After giving baby the bottle for a bit, he now gets stressed at the bottle. Boob wouldn't drop my supply down. Is there a way to get my baby back to enjoying the boob and building my supply again? Yes, there's so many things you can do. I would say definitely reach out if you need help, join the community or do a consult for more advice on this. But I always say the best thing you can do is make the breast a happy place. Have the baby hang out there when he's not breastfeeding. Do lots of skin to skin, take baths together. If baby's getting frustrated at the breast, stop. You can do, I like to do where you start with the bottle with like 10 to 20 mLs, and then you switch to the breast after you've gotten past that hangriness. Those are just a couple of things. Obviously, it's going to depend on the situation in the baby, but that can be really beneficial. Depending on how far you are with breastfeeding, maybe consider getting a new set of bottles to switch and avoid washing. What hours count as night? 10 a.m. to 6 a.m. Those are night. I think it's like between 3 and 6 a.m. is when they say prolactin is the highest. So just be aware of that. When it comes to scheduled feeds, I was told that it's dangerous if the baby sleeps through the night, so I wake him every 3 hours to feed. Is this actually necessary if he is sleeping well? So I would say you don't necessarily need to wake him every 3 hours, especially if he's nursing well. I would say like I wouldn't go more than 5 to 6 hours at night, honestly. Some people can go more and you can experiment with it, but I don't think you need to be waking them every 3 hours. Even with moms who just had their baby, I will say if you can get a good 4-hour chunk at night, that's okay. So I don't think you need to be waking them every 3 hours, but you can always adjust according to your supply. And something to keep in mind is that your supply does go down when your baby gets older, like around 10 months, and I think is when we see a big drop. So that's just something to keep in mind. I have a 10-month-old, really trying to keep as long as I can. Is there a way to buy piece buy courses? Yes. So if you are like, I don't need all of this, I just need your weaning course, reach out to me. I have them all available. All of this stuff you can buy separately that I'm selling. I'm just trying to provide it in a way for people that are kind of more, they want everything in a more affordable way. But yes, if you want just the weaning course, reach out to me. Or I'm assuming it's weaning. It might be solids. I don't know. Might be milk supply. Everything is available separately. What is normal amount to pump at any given pumping session with an established supply? What amount would let you know you have low supply? So usually we look for about 1 to 1.5 ounces per hour from the last time you pumped or breastfed if it's in place of a nursing session. If you're pumping in addition to nursing, it's going to be 0.5 to 2 ounces total. So it's actually not as much as you might think. So there's a wide range, but hopefully that's a good place for you to start. Is there a specific brand of supplements that you recommend? I really like, let's see, what are they called? Mother Love. I like Mother Love. I do have a coupon code for that. If you want it, you can reach out. But I think that they have a really good quality supplements, and I think that they're a good company. So that's who I recommend is Mother Love. My baby takes breast milk and formula. Is there a right time to give each separately? So can they be given together, one after one? It just depends on the baby. You can give them together. Some people like to separate them. Some people just like to keep their breast milk going as long as possible. While others are like, I just wanted to combine them together. So it just depends on the situation and the baby. I don't think you can go wrong. One thing to keep in mind is that if you mix them together, you do need to prepare the formula first and then mix that with the breast milk. So you don't want to put the formula and the milk, like the powder in the milk, and then put water in there, because that's not how you should prepare. So prepare the formula and then mix it together. There are situations where they will just like have you put the powder straight in the breast milk, but that's usually if you're fortifying your breast milk for like a premature baby. I think that was the last question. So thank you so much for coming. I'm so grateful that you came. Let me grab the link. I know some of you, so if you want to sign up for the membership, the link is right here. Let me see. I'll try and find it here. Let's go to the step. Or no, sorry. I'm like not very good at this sometimes. // fuss free. I think you should be able to click on that and sign up for the course if you want. There we go. And the membership, if there's just something you're interested in that you want to get by itself, you can send me an email, katie@thebreastfeedingmama.com. But I really hope that you will consider joining this community. It really breaks out to just be about $33 a month for the yearly. And then I think it's like 37 or so for the quarterly payment a month, which is, I think it's less than a lot of things you'd spend. So I really hope you'll consider doing that. And then, yeah, this is just how you check out. I'm sure all of you know how to check out, but you can do that. Type in your information, your payment information, and it is billed on a regular, like a yearly or quarterly basis. So if you want to cancel before your next billing, you can just tell me and we'll cancel it. But thank you for coming. And now I'm going to give you your bonus. Here is the link. I'm going to share it here. And then you can, it's a Google Drive link, and you can, you can go here, click on that link that I just posted, and you can download the ebook there to your own files, whatever you want. You can just read it there if you want. But I think it has a lot of great information. So thank you for attending. I am so grateful. I had so much fun. Just a second. Let's see. A couple people had more questions. So I said I'd stay until the end. So I'm staying until the end. Could you repeat the response on scheduled feeds? So I'm going to just ask you to look for your email in the next little bit. I'm going to send you a link to my presentation, and then you can fast forward to that part about scheduled feeds. So it should be really helpful. Is there a link for your favorite pump you mentioned? So it's, it wasn't my favorite pump that I mentioned. I will send you the one that I really like is Pumpables. So I think that this is the link. And this is a referral link, just so you know, but I stand behind it completely. And I think the coupon code is TBM10 for 10% off, but I like Pumpables. I also really like, I think you might be talking about the Mom Cozy pump. So I'm going to just send you a couple of these. So Mom Cozy is like the Mom Cozy 5, M5 on Amazon. And I do have coupon codes for it, but I can't remember them off the top of my head. So if you want those, let me know. They can be used on their website or Amazon. But it's Mom Cozy. I like the M5. They have a lot of different pumps out there, though. So you can look into those. I'm 8 months into my journey, and I've noticed a decrease. I haven't changed anything, so I'm not sure what my next step should be. At 8 months, it can be just that you're going through that natural progression where your supply does drop, but it can depend on the baby. My self-assessment would be really helpful for you, I think, or a one-on-one consult. So definitely reach out if you need help. I always say, go back to the last few weeks and kind of see what's happened and see if a drop in supply is causing problems. But Thank you so much for attending. Please reach out if you need help. I would love, 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 love to see you in the fuss-free breastfeeding community. But either way, I hope that you've gotten a lot of value out of the baby Buddha pump. Is great. Yeah, I agree. It's also real. I don't know. I keep going on tangents, but baby Buddha is great, especially if you're someone that can handle a little bit more suction. Some women that are very sensitive, I would not recommend that one for, but I think it's a great pump. But yes, if you need anything, reach out. Please consider signing up. And regardless, come hang out with me on Instagram. Check out my website. I'm constantly sharing new content, and I am just here to support you in whatever way I can. So thank you.